Am I the a-hole for ripping up my brother's apology letter and screaming at him to just leave me alone? We aren't family? Context and a very short version. When I was 17, I was in a relationship with my twin brother's best friend Jake. It lasted 8 years, till we were all finished college and my ex had gotten enough money off his extremely religious parents to get a head start in life. If you don't know where this is going, my brother and Jake were together the whole time and used me as a cover because my feelings didn't matter. My brother had been out since his teens, which is why they came up with the idea to use me so his parents wouldn't get suspicious. My parents were angry with my brother, even cut contact for a year, but they all made up and have been pushing since for us to speak again. I refused to speak to my brother due to how they dismissed me. When everything came out, Jake literally said, "You wouldn't understand." I had no other choice. My brother was worse. Like, I get where Jake was coming from because his parents are nuts, but I didn't deserve to be treated like that. It's been 5 years since everything came out, and I'm currently pregnant with twins with my soon-to-be husband. My brother and Jake moved back to our hometown last year, and they both have been trying via my family/friends, even coworkers, to get me to talk. My mother begged me to sit down like an adult and not let the past ruin my son's chance at having a relationship with her uncle. That the hate I have for my only sibling is ruining our family and my mental health. Then a few hours ago, I stopped by for lunch and to show my parents scanned photos. And guess who was there? The happy couple. I was literally in shock for a few minutes. Then when my brother tried to hug me, I pushed him away. I got so worked up I physically couldn't stop shaking at this. My brother and Jake tried to apologize, talk about what happened, and beg for a relationship. I was in tears and begged them to leave me alone. At the end, my brother handed me a letter and said, "I really wish things could be different. You're my sister, my twin. I do love you and it kills me we don't have each other anymore." So basically, I lost it. Ripped up the letter screaming that we weren't family and I just want him to leave me alone. I walked out after that and had to get a taxi home because I was too upset to drive. Since then, my parents and family members have told me I'm cruel and bitter, that I need to stop living in the past and get over it. Now for the comments. Not stay home. I feel sorry for Jake with his homophobic parents, but what he and your brother did to you is horrible. They betrayed your trust, both as a romantic partner and as a sibling. If they had told you the truth at age 16, you might have even offered to be a cover. But instead, they chose to lie to you for 8 years. No one, not your brother, not your parents, no one gets to determine when you should be over it. You are not obliged to accept any apology, ever. And tell your parents if they can't respect your feelings and your decision, they will no longer be part of you or your children's lives. I've actually have been asked this multiple times, and the honest truth is if they told me the truth from the get-go and asked me to be his fake girlfriend, I probably would have done it so my brother could have been happy. They took that choice away from you. You do not owe them forgiveness. Well, they haven't actually offered a straightforward apology. Might be a decent start. I'd hope you're definitely not the a-hole and has 0 reasons to ever choose to receive it if they do. Not the a-hole. They're monsters. They stole 8 years from your life because there were like no other options. Now they're sorry? Yeah, right. Maybe they want something from you, like being their surrogates in the future. I would stay with no contact with them and low contact to no contact with your parents. You did not break your family. They did it. And now they're harassing you and putting your well-being in danger. Screw them all. Be strong. I don't even think of that, to be honest. Well, they planted used you once. With that kind of disgusting and horrible people, everything is possible. I'm so sorry, Opie. Not the a-hole. Your mother ambushed you. You should cut off the lot of them. I think I will with my parents till at least after I've given birth. Or I get it in writing that they won't try that again. Next story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for walking out of my surprise birthday party?" So it was my 20th female birthday today, and from the minute I woke up, nobody has acknowledged my birthday. I walked downstairs to my kitchen, and my mom was reading her newspaper, ignoring me completely. She even had some demands about cooking and cleaning, so my day already started a little off. My dad and brother both ignored me as well. Normally, my dad wishes me at least a happy birthday, but today he just said nothing. My friends seem to have forgotten it as well, as they literally said nothing. My friend messaged me about some clothes, but nothing more. I just didn't feel special, as stupid as it sounds. It was the same at work. My colleague spoke about my birthday yesterday, yet today nobody acknowledged it or said anything. I just felt so miserable and ignored. So before heading home after work, I bought myself a small birthday cake just to treat myself and make it a little better. Well, when I got home and ready to just have a dip, my whole family/friends and colleagues were in my living room. They told me how they had been all excited to surprise me, but I just couldn't help myself but feel upset. They ignored me throughout the whole day, and now they want me to be all happy and chatty? I just walked out. I walked back to my car, and now I'm sitting in a McDonald's parking lot writing this. My phone is being blown up about me being the a-hole for walking out. I do feel kind of bad, but I just couldn't do it anymore. Should I have just sucked it up, or was I the a-hole for walking out? People seem to be confused about surprise parties in here. Surprise parties don't mean you go the whole day without acknowledging the birthday and making someone feel awful as a bit. It just means you don't acknowledge that there is a party that is going to take place. Lol, right? Some commenters seem to think the point of a surprise party is to make you feel absolutely awful about yourself first. Then when everyone yells, "Surprise!" you can feel happy and live again. Life is not a sitcom. I'd be feeling awkward if someone threw me a surprise party, because I would already have plans or plan to not have plans. I'm not the most sociable person anyway, so a surprise party just isn't me. Not stay home. People really need to stop going with plans that only happen/work in fiction. Normal people with their heads on right can still manage a surprise party while also saying happy birthday and the like. Nothing that happens implied plans or care, and it's very okay to be upset by the emotional whiplash. Please don't listen to anyone saying that not saying happy birthday when a surprise party is planned is normal. It's not. Correct. I have thrown and have had surprise parties thrown for me. Not once was the birthday guy/girl ignored all day beforehand. It's stupid and mean. I hate the idea of having a surprise party for myself, but I've helped throw them for several people who I know would love them. There's always been some setup first, and no one would ignore the person. For my moms, my dad pretended that they were going out to a fancy dinner, and they were just dropping me and my brother off at my grandparents' house for the night. The party was in their backyard. One of my close friends thought her boyfriend was taking her to brunch, which he was. It was just that a dozen of us were also there. Even the ones where the person came home to a big surprise, we usually found a way to make them think they were doing something sociable. So they were dressed and ready for some sort of something even without knowing that it was a party. Next story. Am I the a-hole for being mad at my parents because they withheld information about my medical history from me? I have had nose and sinus issues my entire life. I could never breathe out of my nose to the point where not only my smell and taste were almost non-existent, but I could only mouth breathe. I also had a snot 24/7. Sometimes it was like a leaky tap where it would not stop. I went through so much clothes and beddings because of getting snot all over everything and my clothes too. I got made fun of a lot at school, and it used to make my teachers angry. I was so self-conscious and didn't have any friends. My parents always said there was no cure or anything when they took me to the doctor. At the beginning of this year, I moved for a job. I grew up in Nevada and the job was in Louisiana. I got here a few weeks before my start date to get set up. This is where it started. Within days of moving here, I could breathe out of my nose. No more snot, and I can smell and taste. It freaked me out at first because this had never been possible in my life. I'm not a mouth breather anymore, and my sleep is not disturbed now. One of the good things about my job besides the pay is that it comes with insurance. I got a checkup at the dentist, the eye doctor, and a doctor for the first time since I was 12. I had these when I was a kid, but when I was about 12, my dad got a new job, but the insurance was not good. We only went to the doctor or dentist for major things like a broken bone. I was still on my dad's insurance before I got my job. My new doctor asked for my medical records if I had them. My first doctor was gone, but the building is still there, and they had mine from a long time ago. There wasn't much from the second. This is where I found out my parents lied to me. In my old records, it says a bunch of times the dry air hurts my sinuses. The doctor says a less dry climate would relieve them, but besides that, there is medication, and a humidifier would help. It says so over and over. They never told the second doctor this information either. I asked my parents about it, and they were angry that I got the medical records because they said it was private. My mom said they didn't try medication because it was too much of a hassle to remember to give me the pills. My dad said moving was out of the question since it would remove my sister from her friends, and a humidifier was too much work for mom. I'm not so self-centered to think they should have moved, but if I had this info when I was older, I could have been responsible for my own medication, and I would have moved from Nevada when I was 18 if I knew it would help. My parents must have told my sister everything because she blew up my phone with calls and messages, saying I shouldn't have snooped in the medical records. And mom and dad were right to tell me there was no cure because the medication and other stuff was too much to put on their plate. Am I the a-hole for being furious about this? If I knew, I could have taken steps to fix this when I was old enough. I'm also perturbed they think me not being able to breathe properly was no big deal. Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Yes, those records were private, but they weren't private from you. Those are your records. Your parents were being very neglectful and awful. I'm so glad you can live your new life in a place that is healthy for you. My mom said they didn't try medication because it was too much of a hassle to remember to give me the pills. They had various medical interventions available, yet they chose to neglect OP's needs because it was an inconvenience. The gall on them to get mad at OP. Humidifier was too much work for mom. You put water in a tank and plug it in. Hell, OP probably could have done it himself. Some people should not be parents. Yeah, I learned to operate a basic one at like age 4. And the medicine regimen for dry sinuses usually isn't terribly difficult either. I got seasonally dry sinuses. Doctor just told us to get OTC saline spray and come back if it didn't clear up for a prescription. Even pills and kids aren't that bad. After dry sinus season, we went immediately to pollen hell season, and mom just plopped our breakfast down on the kitchen table with a side of Claritin. Of all the medical conditions that a child can have, I feel like dry sinuses should have been one of the easiest to manage. They didn't try medication because it was too much of a hassle and a humidifier was too much work for mom. Apparently being a parent was too much work for them as well. This is negligence. Plain and simple. Not a-hole. Yes, this is straight up negligence. As in, if CPS had found out about this, it would have been a problem. Negligence. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for letting my niece drink and watch graphic movie? I was spending a weekend at our family's cabin with my sister's family. They came in a few hours after me, 37 female, and realized they left a bunch of stuff they needed, so they were going to drive into the nearest town for them. My niece, 23, wanted to stay behind to enjoy the lake, so they left her behind. But it started raining and there's no data or Wi-Fi at the cabin, so she complained there was nothing to do since she forgot to download something. I had my laptop with me that had a bunch of old movies on it and gave it to her. I didn't check what she was watching and she had her headphones in, so I didn't hear anything. I didn't bother to check either because I assumed she was an adult and could watch whatever she wanted anyway. Then she asked if she could get one of the beers I brought with me and some of the snacks, and I said okay and went to lay down. My sister, husband, and brother were back after maybe 1.5 hours and found her watching Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, 2009 version, and on her second beer. They were so mad and were yelling at her, until she said I gave her the laptop and said she could have some beer. And then they got mad at me saying she isn't allowed to drink, and the dirty movie was going to turn her into a cheap woman. I definitely remember drinking as a family with my nephew who is 21. Age of drinking is 19 as we live in British Columbia, Canada. I asked if she had a medical condition or are on meds, and they said no, but alcohol was bad so no one should drink. They dismissed when I asked why my nephew was drinking with us near the holidays if she wasn't allowed to, and they argued if they didn't let him drink at home, he would go out and get drunk, and get into trouble anyway. But my niece was a good girl and wouldn't drink if it wasn't around. In my opinion, if my niece wants to drink, she can walk into any liquor store and get it anyway. So as long as she's not drinking too much, it shouldn't be a problem. But am I the a-hole for letting my niece drink and watch a graphic movie? Not the a-hole. 23 is an adult. You weren't letting her do anything. She made a choice. This is hilarious. When I was 23, I went backpacking around Europe for 10 weeks on my own. Met up with friends here and there, but mostly on my own. When I got back, my younger brother had mentioned that a friend of his was shocked that my parents let me go. He basically had to explain to this girl that I lived on my own, in a different city, made my own money, and was a grown adult. There was absolutely nothing my parents could have done to stop me. Not that they wanted to. Absolutely not stay home. Not stay home. You didn't let anyone do anything. She's 23. Lol. She's been able to buy her own alcohol for almost 5 years. That's insane. And she has been able to watch an R-rated foreign films for almost 6 years. Not stay home. What the heck is wrong with your sister? That's wildly creepy, calling a grown woman a good girl as a parent. That is disgusting. She's not a child. Low-key perverted. Like they want to keep her purity or something. Nasty AF. Very weird. And watching girl with a dragon tattoo will turn her into a cheap woman? What planet do they live on? And why does niece put up with this at 23? Not stay home. As someone who tolerated this into their 20s, you think it's normal until you can get away. Then you realize it's messed up. Am I the a-hole for making all the women in my family leave after they all showed up to my wedding wearing white? I, male 33, have a large family. Mostly aunts and female cousins aside from mom, stepmom, stepsister, and grandmother. I don't know how to say this, but all those women I mentioned above are into teasing and joking. They formed a unit, which I admit is kind of toxic, and they tease and roast every new woman that enters the family by marriage by setting up tests to see if they deserve to be part of the family, or roast their looks and styles to the point of breaking confidence and self-esteem down. Then after a few months of teasing, they'd announce that they've finally welcomed them into the family. The newest member would join in on the teasing too, which is crazy as my dad says. When I first introduced my then girlfriend, now wife, I made it clear that I didn't want any of the women in the unit to come at her or harass her, not even a single word. They went behind my back and roasted her looks and job. And I discovered they've been doing it on Facebook. I had them apologize one by one after they gave the "we're just testing the water to see if she's capable to be part of the family" excuse. They didn't want to apologize, but once I said I wouldn't invite any of the units unless they apologize, including my mom, everyone immediately apologized and brought gifts for my wife. First of them was my stepmom and my sister-in-law. My wedding was 2 weeks ago. There was talk about the women in the family wanting to pull a prank on my wife by wearing white, and called it the ultimate test to see how my wife react. My brother warned me, so I announced that if any one of them showed up in white, I would have them kicked out, including mom. They said this wasn't true, and that they'd never do such a thing. But then they showed up to my wedding one by one, wearing white dresses, and each and every one of them was told to leave after they tried giving excuses, by either making scenes or getting the man involved. The senior women of the unit who are mom and aunts also showed up in white, but refused to leave. I threatened to take harsher action, and mom was pissed, telling me to step aside, but I didn't let her in. I had her leave while the men of the family were watching stunned. Dad was on my side and supported me a lot. I felt absolutely awful because my wedding was being interrupted by them making scenes. My wife was hurt beyond measure, but the women in the family were pissed. My cousin blasted me in social media later, saying I excluded all the women from the wedding because my wife was so insecure that she couldn't handle another woman's presence at her wedding. I had an argument with them, and mom berated me saying it was supposed to be a prank, but I said they were taking it too far. Mom said it took it too far by kicking them out, because they were trying to get a reaction from my wife to see if she was one of those bridezillas, and were going to change soon as the prank was over. But I ruined my own entire wedding by reacting so aggressively. I stopped talking after she said I had to bring my wife and apologize. I haven't seen a lot of them in 2 weeks, and they've excluded me from everything. Was I the a-hole for how I handled this? Edit. I just want to explain that A, this has been happening for years. The men in the family are split on this behavior. Some of them encourage it, like my uncle and my cousin's husbands. One is now an ex. And some are against it, like me and my dad and brother. B, the women claim that there's nothing hurtful in what they do, because they claim they're just looking out for his men. and that their goal ultimately is to make sure the women who enter the family are decent. C. My dad always ends up arguing with my mom and grandmother, since they're the ones who started this whole thing with their behavior and attitude towards other women. D. And I'm not sure if I should mention this, but my male cousin, who's a middle schooler, said he'd make sure to leave the country before even meeting any woman because of this, and it made me chuckle. Also, the dresses they showed up in were simple white dresses. Nothing over the top, but still were white dresses. I realized they went ahead with their plans, even after I stated what I'd do in that case. Now for the top comments. Not a day home. Your family's toxic, and I'm so sad for your wife that they would do that, but also so happy for her that she has a husband who will support her and have her back. I'm sorry your family tried to hijack your wedding for a power play, but you did the right thing, and your marriage will be stronger because of it. Can you imagine how the wife's family thought about all of this? If I were the mother of Opie's wife, I would be really worried about my daughter being around those women. Good on Opie for breaking the cycle. Not a day home. This level of hazing has crossed the line to emotional mistreatment and blackmail, and that is probably understating it. It's very good you stood up for your spouse. You handled it well, but emotional blackmailers use family to pressure the victims into compliance with the mistreatment. Most often, when standing up to familial emotional blackmailers, it ends with forced no contact for non-compliance. No contact is healthier, but it can be hard to be shunned from the family. This is hazing. That's the only word for it. It's repugnant behavior. The women in your family haze new members of their sorority. It is incredibly harmful. No. First cardinal rule, don't wear white to a wedding unless you're the bride. If you do, you're the a-hole. I'm sure they're well aware of this rule. That's why they did what they did. They knew how much that would make my wife feel hurt. To me, that's the point you and her have to stick to going forward. So many sweet daughter-in-laws try to make amends by focusing on, you hurt me, please stop. But the women in your family know they hurt people with us. And that is the very reason they do it. They intentionally hurt people and only stop once that hurt person joins in on picking on the next one. So I think you and your wife should consider just not giving these women more opportunities to hurt people you love. You should probably think about going low or no contact. People who intentionally hurt their own son on his wedding day like this don't really deserve to be part of your new beautiful life. I'd be worried about how they'll treat your wife as the marriage progresses, especially if you decide to have children. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for what I said when my husband told his family basically I handled everything in the house? So me, female 26, and my husband, male 29, recently got married. We both contribute to household chores, but me more than him even after we made separate schedule and split chores equally. He'd ask me for favors like fix the kitchen faucet for him, deal with the bugs in the backyard, etc., which are originally his chores, but because he said he had to finish work or complain from being tired, then I'd handle them happily and without hesitation. We were visiting his parents for the first time since we got married. My mother-in-law and I were talking about home duties and whatnot. Then my father-in-law asked my husband how marriage life was treating him, and my husband sighed and said, "Oh man." Then started talking about how exhausted he was from handling almost all responsibilities and taking on so many chores this past week, from fixing the kitchen faucet, dealing with the bugs in the backyard, taking our dogs to the vet, cleaning the entire basement, which are all things I did for him. But clearly he was trying to take credit. It kept on about how he does most chores around the house and working as well, so he had no me time. He said, basically, I handle everything in the house, while smug smiling. I was taken aback completely. I said, hold on, because literally all the stuff he mentioned was done by me. His parents were like, huh? He kept staring at me confused, as I explained in details how I handled each and every one of those chores, which should have originally had been done by him, but he kept making excuses to get out of it. I even shared pictures I took that I posted on Facebook, especially the basement like before/after pictures. Then I told him no more favors from now on if this is how he's gonna play. Silence followed, and the entire family side-eyed my husband as he kept looking away. He didn't say anything till we got home, and that is where he pointed out how I was wrong for how I responded, and should have just either agreed or said nothing at all, but apparently made him feel incompetent in front of his family. We argued, and he apologized for saying what he said, and asked me to apologize so we could move past this. But I refused, and said I was being treated in an unfair manner since I worked hard to do him those favors. Not a day home. He made you look lazy in front of your in-laws. And not only did he lie about taking the brunt of household responsibilities, but he specifically brought up chores that you both know you did. That's not okay. It is purposefully putting you down in front of others. Not a great start to a marriage. This. Not only did he expect you to go along with the lie, he also expects you to apologize for it. Apologize for what exactly? Him playing stupid games? I don't think so. This would be my hill to die on. He put you down to his family to make you look bad because he couldn't come out and be honest. His lies had consequences. One of them having to be his apology for causing an issue, not yours. Your husband is an a-hole. He deserves to feel incompetent because he chose to be that way. You didn't put a gun to his head and tell him to lie. Why should you clean up his mess and apologize? Hell no, OP. Be honest about what though? This is just such a weird thing to lie about that I have to wonder his motivation. Why on earth wouldn't he have just said, actually, we've just kind of been settling in? Or even, meh, I wasn't feeling great this week, so the wife picked up the slack this week. This is his family. They know his character pretty well. I think most adults are past trying to impress mommy and daddy. He literally just went out of his way, for no reason, to make his wife look bad. Not a a-hole. If he doesn't want to feel incompetent, then he should be incompetent. I never understand people would do this. Like he knows he does nothing. He knows OP knows he does nothing. But then he tells bold-faced lies and gets hurt when the truth comes out. Like, if you know the truth is going to make you seem a certain way, then why don't you just shut your mouth? Or put into work you want credit for? He could have even said, it's hard, but OP has been great, if he wants to play like he contributes. But he chose to lie unprovoked, and is now trying to guilt her into an apology. Just yikes. The only person who made him look bad is himself by lying. Good for you for calling him out and sticking to it. Next story. Am I the a-hole for going to stay with my in-laws after my husband told me I shouldn't be here when I tried to surprise him and getting him in trouble with his family? So, my husband travels a lot for business, so we don't get to see each other as often as I would like, unless I go with him, which isn't always possible. I found out he was going to be in the country his parents live in, and I thought it would be a nice idea to fly there too, so I could surprise him and see my in-laws as well, since I haven't seen my husband since August and my in-laws since 2019. Well, it didn't go down as I had planned. The first thing my husband said when he saw me was, "You shouldn't be here." And when I asked him what he meant by that, all he said was he had a meeting that he was getting late for, and left. Honestly, his whole reaction really hurt, since I thought he would be happy to see me, since we haven't seen each other in so long. I ended up going to see my in-laws since my sister-in-law was also visiting her parents, and she kept telling me to come over. When I got there, they were much happier to see me, but noticed I was upset about something. They kept asking me, and I told them about how my husband had reacted. My mother-in-law basically told me I would be staying with them for the duration of my visit, since he couldn't appreciate me coming all this way to see him. My father-in-law sent him a message telling him to come to their house for dinner since I was here, and when he got here, they basically told him off for how he reacted. Once dinner was over, my husband wanted me to come home with him so we could talk about what happened. But my in-laws kept insisting I stay with them instead, and I ended up choosing to stay with them instead of going with him. My husband comes over every single night for dinner and is very obviously angry at me still. We did talk about it through text the day it happened, and my husband was mad that I chose to stay, and that I ran to tattle to his family. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. His reaction is concerning and leaves me wondering if he's got a second family, a second wife, or a mistress. And I also wonder if his family is aware. Yep, first thought. He shouldn't be here is a very weird way to react, even if he is busy or stressed. Yes, I'm away from home for college and don't get to see my family. College is hard and I feel stressed all the time. When my parents and brother visit though, it's like the stress disappears, even if it's just for a minute or two, and then the feeling's right back. I would imagine seeing my significant other would elicit an even greater response of joy. I've been at a new job for about a month that requires 50% travel. I was away last week, home this week, and I'm leaving Monday for another week. If my partner showed up at my hotel or office to surprise me partway through the week, I would be overjoyed. Just to show up for the other side of this, I would not be overjoyed at a surprise like this. So I think it's a little unfair for the sub to immediately pile onto this guy for not being stoked about a pretty huge change of plans he has to navigate around now. If Opie had given him some space to get over the initial disgruntlement and heard his side of it rather than bring the in-laws into it, letting them tear into him without hearing his side, and then choosing to stay with them without even hearing his side, there's a decent possibility Opie wouldn't even be here posting this. If I were on a business trip and I already had a general sense of how everything was going to go, and I was on my way out the door, and then my significant other showed up out of the blue without me being able to get her settled in or have time to process what was going on, I'd have to be rattled right before a meeting that I was already running late for. My initial response would be less than warm, let's just say. It would be more along the lines of, "What are you doing here?" Meaning, I can't pay attention to you right now, and we're not going to have a quality interaction. And now I'm rattled and have to recalibrate, which I can do, but it's going to have to happen after the meeting. And I really wish you hadn't put me in the spot, which could have been easily avoided with a text message that I would have really appreciated. But that's me. I don't think it's fair for Opie to show up out of nowhere and then be upset that her husband didn't give her the welcome she wanted right before a business meeting. Just because she might have liked such a surprise doesn't mean everyone is into that. I feel like people who like surprises and change gears easily don't understand people who don't, and then get their feelings hurt like this. Last story. Am I the a-hole for abruptly leaving my boyfriend at his family dinner after they refused to respect my allergies? I, 19 female, recently got the chance to safely see my boyfriend, 20 male, family for dinner. I work as a paramedic and would reject going to any plans my boyfriend had with me wanting to go see his family due to COVID. I recently got the chance to have a 2-week vacation. I decided to accept my boyfriend's offer to see his family. I asked my boyfriend what would be served, and just checking in to see if what they would make won't have seafood/shellfish, since I'm allergic to them. The day comes that I had a good time with them, up until the time for us to eat. I noticed that the food they had mostly had either seafood in it, or was entirely seafood. I asked if they had anything else, but my boyfriend insisted I should just eat a little to not be disrespectful. I stood my ground and informed him and his family that I'm severely allergic to seafood. And after they insisted that they won't serve me or make anything that doesn't have seafood, I thanked them and left. Today, I got angry text messages from my boyfriend, upset that I disrespected him and his family, and wanted me to apologize to them. But I'm not going to. Am I the a-hole? This is a tough one. Should you protect yourself from a severe allergy attack, or should you protect your boyfriend's family's feelings? Not today, Holoby. And drop the boyfriend. He's got a medical condition where his head is stuck real deep somewhere. It blows my mind how many of these types of posts I read where an in-law family expects a daughter-in-law or sister-in-law to eat what they're allergic to. It's like, so you would rather they die? Okay then. What is disrespectful is telling someone to endanger themselves to cater to people and willing to be reasonable people. Your boyfriend is actively trying to hurt you. And his family. There is literally no reason that every dish had up have seafood in it. These people were trying to prove Opie was lying about her allergies. If she had eaten it, then she would have been blamed because she had an attack. This boyfriend is bad news, and I would dump him. Am I the a-hole for asking my sister-in-law if she didn't want kids? Why did she get pregnant? So this title is bad, I acknowledge this, but allow me to introduce you to my sister-in-law, Laurel. Laurel married my brother around 5 years ago. They had always been child-free and extremely proud of it, which I'm to a point. She has always been disparaging of children and the idea of children, and consistently would judge other mothers around us for how they handled their own kids. She would comment rude things about people who would breastfeed in public, or even be bold enough to tell them, "You should cover up because my husband can see you too." Overall, Laurel doesn't like kids. Well, guess what? Laurel is pregnant now, and both her and my brother planned this pregnancy, so it's not an accident. The family was very excited, but Laurel has made a misery out of the entire pregnancy. And to be honest, we know she plans to make a misery out of her poor kid's life as well. The baby is a girl, and she'll say things like, "I don't want to deal with her long hair, so I'll shave it off to keep it maintainable." Or, "I hate dresses. I'll never let her wear those." She refuses to let us buy the baby toys or anything enjoyable, saying that the child won't want those till they're like 3 years old. I don't even like babies, but I know that's a complete lie. I finally snapped when she was at a family dinner. She kept telling us how terrible it was to have to get the baby's room ready, and how she hated having to buy everything for it. How this kid was already so expensive and wasn't even here yet, and making her life miserable. I asked her why she got pregnant if she didn't want this kid. That was a bowling ball catastrophe, And even though my brother often tells me he asks the same thing, apparently Laurel doesn't like getting called out about her behavior toward her unborn child. Am I the a-hole for asking her if she didn't want kids, why did she get pregnant? Edit. Something else I'd like to add. Laurel's currently 35. She isn't young, and neither is my brother. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. For Pete's sake, somebody had to ask. How does the brother not even know? How did this not come up during the planning? This isn't even an elephant in the room. It's a blue whale. Oh, he knows. He's just not talking for some reason. Not the a-hole. She has his balls in her purse. This is a situation ripe for child mistreatment. OP should have CPS on speed dial, ready to push that button the moment they suspect the kid is being mistreated. Not the a-hole. But please plan on being the most awesome auntie ever. I have a feeling your niece will need someone in her life desperately. Heck yeah. Even if Laurel decides to cut it off with me, and by extension my brother because she has him in her pocket, I'll always be here for that kid in the future. Next story. Am I the a-hole for moving to avoid adopting my niece? My cousin had been on a bit of a wild child streak and ended up in prison. She got out and had her daughter, which made everyone think she's going to get it together. Well, she didn't. And my aunt had to take over all the parenting duties to keep CPS from taking her away. My aunt is now in her 50s and not healthy enough to care for my niece, who has started acting out in the same way as her mother. My cousin flits in and out of my niece's life and taken her back occasionally, only to bring her back to my aunt when she can't handle her anymore. The child has been in juvie already, and it seems she's going the same way as my cousin. My aunt is running out of options as my niece runs around town, and she isn't healthy enough to drive around searching for her in the middle of the night. So my aunt is trying to get the rest of the family to take care of her, but everyone refuses. My aunt is now pressuring me to adopt my cousin, who is 14. She doesn't mean legally, but to assume responsibility until the age of 18. My family is also taken to pressuring me since it will mean the pressure's taken off them. Also, most of them have person problems, kids. I don't want my niece to ruin their kids, while I don't have any. I absolutely don't want to. I don't want my cousin in my life, which will be inevitable if I adopt my niece. And my niece? She's basically my cousin on steroids. I have no idea how my cousin and niece ended up so messed up, and I don't want to wait to see my own life be ruined if I have to take care of my niece. Hell, I resisted not getting a dog during the pandemic because I couldn't commit to one long term, so there's no way I can commit to a child. I get emails and texts, and my aunt's banging on my door semi-frequently, once a week, dragging my niece in tow trying to get me to let her in. I have literally been in tears begging them to leave me alone, but we all live 2 to 3 hours away from each other, and only my mom is telling me not to do it. My boyfriend noticed the craziness from my family, and the midnight phone calls from my aunt trying to get me to come pick her up, and ask what we should do. I told him I just didn't want to be involved, and he suggested we move. We've been thinking of moving for a while now, actually. His family's in Oregon, and I've been thinking of moving for a few years. His family has a house that they're trying to rent out, and we could try there for a few weeks. We did that, and we're now in Oregon. I know my family aren't going to chase me here, and it's quiet. We went back to Arkansas for a few days to pack up what's left and visit some old friends. Somehow, someone let it slip I was coming because my aunt is at my door screaming at me for leaving without a word. My boyfriend calls his friend to come help us take the rest of our stuff, and we leave. Then I see my aunt drop to her knees crying, and now I feel horrible since she's such a proud woman, and I've never seen her like this. I know what's best for me, not adopting my niece, but am I the a-hole here? 100% not the a-hole. In my opinion, what she is asking you is completely insane. Do not feel bad. You did what you had to do. Your aunt is in a horrible situation, but it is not your fault and not your responsibility to fix. My family's also taken to pressuring me since it will mean the pressure is taken off them. Definitely not the a-hole. Notice how everyone else wants you to do it, so they don't have to. You made a right choice. This reminds me of a saying I once heard. Raise your kids right or raise your grandkids. Sounds like she's trying to force the grandkid onto someone else after failing to raise her own kid. Not the a-hole. Sorry you had to get run out of your own home to avoid all this crazy. But on the upside, Oregon is a nice place. Underrated wine country too. Also, do try to find out who the rat is that told your aunt had cut them out like cancer. Not the a-hole. Your cousin's child is not your child and not your responsibility. I feel sorry for this girl as her mother has clearly done a number on her. She may also be acting out because she feels like no one wants her. As tragic as that is, again, this is not a burden that you should have to assume. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for turning my plate around after being served dinner by my mother-in-law? My husband, 29 male and I, 23 female, have been married for a year, but have been together for almost 3 years now. We are currently staying with my in-laws for 2 weeks, whilst our house gets painted. My sister-in-law and her husband and 2 kids are also living with my in-laws as well. Sadly, my mother-in-law doesn't like me very much, as she wanted my husband to marry one of her friend's daughter, who was also his ex. But I still try to be as friendly as possible with her, since she's my husband's mother. I just want to add that we could have stayed in a hotel, but my mother-in-law insisted that my husband stay with them. So, I was helping my mother-in-law cook dinner. We made a simple dish of salmon and some veggies, and she plated the food and placed them on the dinner table whilst I were making our dessert. I had made an apple crumble beforehand, but it was too sweet for her liking, so she told me to make it again. After we all sat down to eat, I noticed the way my plate was oriented, and the salmon was on the right and the veggies were on the left. For nearly everyone, this isn't a big deal and wouldn't bother them. But I have a bit of a quirk that my meat/fish should always be on the left, and any vegetables or sides should be on the right. It's very hard to explain, but unless I move my food around so that the meat is on the left and anything else is on the right, I find it very hard to eat and swallow. To solve this issue, I just turned my plate in 180 degrees so that the salmon would be on the left and the veggies on the right. I didn't say anything or make any expression, but my mother-in-law noticed me turning my plate around and started to blow up. She said that moving something that was already set on the table was bad manners, and couldn't believe how rude I was being in her house. I apologized and tried to explain that I just had this thing where one thing needs to be on a certain side, but she interrupted me and went on a tangent saying that this shows how immature I am, and that my husband's ex never behaved like this. My husband tried to calm her down, saying that we shouldn't argue whilst having dinner, but then she started complaining about how I couldn't cook, because whilst making dinner together, she kept having a problem with how big I cut the veggies, even though they were perfectly normal-sized, and how bad of a wife I was for not being able to do simple things. Throughout the entire meal, she kept complaining, and I felt horrible and was pretty much on the verge of tears. My sister-in-law later told me that her kids are more mature than I am, and my husband also got annoyed at me and said I ruined dinner for the whole family, and this whole mess could have been avoided if I had done nothing. I now feel horrible for ruining dinner, especially since my husband works a lot and doesn't see his family often. Now for the comments. Not an a-hole, but your mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and dear husband are. They sound like toxic people. Your husband should have your back here. Go stay in a hotel, for your sanity if anything. And find a good divorce lawyer as well. This is mistreatment. What a horribly vindictive family, and how incredibly telling it is for your husband to gang up on you. All because you turned your plate around? Turned your plate around? What planet are these people from where turning your plate around is even noticed? This was absolutely a setup by mother-in-law, who intended to do this to you so she could bring up the ex. And sister-in-law took the opportunity to make you feel worse, and your husband piled on the first opportunity. Unless he's willing to go through some serious therapy to fix these massive issues, you will eventually divorce. I would cut my losses at this point if he isn't immediately, genuinely, and completely apologetic. You have done nothing wrong in this, even if you had cut the vegetables wrong. Not stay home. Your mother-in-law and sister-in-law are looking for an excuse to put you down. It didn't matter if you were perfect. They would have found something. I'm more concerned that your husband didn't 100% have your back while you were being mistreated by his family. I know you didn't ask for advice, but this sounds like it could be a very troublesome marriage. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that her infertility is not my problem? I'm 18 female and 34 weeks pregnant. My sister is 35 female and suffers with infertility. She has no kids and is starting to look into adoption. When I told her I was pregnant, she immediately started going crazy. She said it's not fair, that I'm abusing my fertility, and that I should give my baby up because I have life to live. It's been like this my entire pregnancy. Most recently, she started asking me if I want to try a co-parenting relationship with her, where I give her my baby 2 days of the week and make her a legal custodian. I said no to this one too. She also keeps asking me to adopt my baby to her, and it's just not happening. She came over for brunch this morning, and brought up the idea of her adopting my baby. I am very much prepared for. This time, I snapped and said to her, I don't understand what it's like not to be able to have children, but your fertility is not my problem to solve, and I am not giving you my child. Please don't push me. Everyone in the room thinks I am the a-hole for this, and my parents are giving me the cold shoulder for being so insensitive. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Do not let your sister babysit. Do not leave her alone with your child. 1,000,000 times this. This is a true crime documentary waiting to happen. I think there was an episode like this of Twisted Sisters on Discovery ID. There was. She found out her sister was pregnant, lied to her husband that she was pregnant too, faked her entire pregnancy, gave birth alone a few days after her sister, then took her sister and new baby on a drive, offed her sister with a rock to the head and pushed her over a bridge. She took the baby home, and her husband returned, who then called the police when he realized the baby looked an awful lot like her sister's. She had blood on her and was not acting normal. Not a hole, because how many times do you have to say no? Tell her to accept the no and move on, because if she doesn't, then you're done talking to her until she does. Your parents are trying to comfort her, but not realizing they're just not acting right towards you. Talk to them. Tell them you shouldn't have to keep hearing it from her over and over again. Congratulations on your baby. Edited to add, I agree with others who have said to please do not ever leave your baby with your sister. She sounds desperate enough to take the baby and run. Yeah, no. You're not an a-hole for not giving away your child. How the hell does that even sound? How does this even cross someone's mind? This is so crazy to the point it sounds a little bit unreal. Not an a-hole. Given the fact that she's literally trying to beg, buy, or steal your baby, what you said is mild. Struggling with infertility is rough. I hope your sister recognizes that she needs therapy to cope, because she's clearly not coping well. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my sister she won't get to babysit again while her boyfriend is around? I have a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. I have a younger sister who about a year ago started dating a guy I went to high school with. The guy was not a good guy then, and he got into trouble, was arrested, treated others terribly, and did some things that show he is not a good person to have around kids. My sister is normally a really reliable and trustworthy person, but her taste in men has never been good. She dated a guy who had kids, didn't take care of them, and wanted to marry him. She dated a dealer for a while. She dated a guy who went to prison 2 months in and stayed with him for a few months after his release because she didn't believe his stealing from his brother's girlfriend was enough reason to break up. This current guy is still rough around the edges, to say the least. I met him twice since, and the second time he tried to pick a fight with my husband because they disagreed on a video game, and he, sister's boyfriend, was mad. We're talking real mad, to the point my husband had to just leave. My sister had babysat a couple of times for us in the past, and she loved doing it. Then 2 weekends ago, my husband and I were having a night out with friends. She offered to babysit, but I said it was okay, we already had plans made, which was true, but those plans were my husband's parents who were out of the way. My sister realized this after my daughter told her that grandma gave her ice cream for dinner. My sister was hurt that I didn't make the easy decision of her. I told her I didn't feel comfortable leaving my kids with her while her boyfriend is around. She told me I judged him too hard. We talked at length about him before. She claims he has changed, that he was always misunderstood, etc. I told her she wasn't in school with him, and she didn't see his crap on a daily basis back then. I also pointed out his reaction over a video game disagreement, but she said he was just having a bad day. So I told her I wouldn't want him having a bad day around my kids. She said I should still trust her and rely on her to take care of my kids. I told her there will be no babysitting for her while he's around. She said he's going to be their uncle, so I better get used to him being around. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. People change from high school, but he clearly still has anger issues if he actually gets mad about a disagreement about video games. Opie has a duty to protect her children. I'd rather have hurt feelings than put my kids in a potentially dangerous situation. I told her I wouldn't want him having a bad day around my kids. Exactly my thoughts. If he blows up about the video games and wants to fight a grown man, he's very likely to blow up at smaller annoyances. And kids, while I love them, can be annoying. Not the a-hole. Keep them away from him. Not the a-hole. She said he's going to be their uncle, so I better get used to him being around. Okay, she can marry whoever she wants. You can assign whoever you want as a babysitter.